Hi, friends. Hello, everyone, and welcome for this special session with Karla McLaren, award-winning author, social science researcher, and an expert and an innovator in the field of empathy and teaching about emotions. We're here celebrating a new book release. It's the Language of Emotions workbook. I'm so proud and pleased to be able to celebrate this new interactive guide. It covers 17 different emotions. And here in this session, Karla is going to take us into an exploration of 4 emotions that are often misunderstood: shame, anxiety, jealousy, and envy. I'm going to take us back for a moment here. It was back in 2009 when Sounds True started working with Karla McLaren, and in 2010 we published her book, The Language of Emotions. And it was a big moment for me. Karla taught me more about emotions in her book, The Language of Emotions, than I had learned up till that point in my entire lifetime, truth be told. That every emotion brings with it a wisdom function. That's my own language for it. It's a messenger. It brings to us some information that will help us, that we need to have. And I'd never thought of emotions that way. And I also learned from Karla back in 2010 that we don't have to valence our emotional experiences. We don't have to say, this is positive, this is negative, this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion. Instead, we can learn from every single one and they can express their wisdom function. And this honestly was a gift to me from Karla that changed my life as an emotional, deeply feeling human. And I just feel so grateful to have this chance to share Karla's work with more and more people. In 2023, we published an updated version of The Language of Emotions, and now the workbook, The Language of Emotions workbook. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karla. She'll share more about her view of emotions and then introduce us to an exploration working with these 4 emotional states that are often misunderstood. Karla, over to you. Now, Karla, I'm not hearing you. I don't know if that experience is happening for everybody. We can look here, but maybe start again. No, people are saying they're not hearing you either. I know we did a test and you sounded great, but I'm not hearing you at the moment. But you can share about the emotions of disappointment, frustration. Oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
Okay. All right.
Let's start
Zoom.
again.
Yes,
Karla,
thank
over
you.
to you.
Zoom is arguing with my podcast microphone, so they're having a moment. Thank you so much, Tami. I am so glad that we published this book together, and that you and your emotions are good friends, because they certainly deserve it, and they deserve everybody deserves to be friends with their emotions. I think the way that most of us learned about emotions was as problems, as something you either didn't have enough of, in the case of perhaps happiness, or something you had way too much of, for instance, like anger or depression. So the the skills we needed to learn to work with emotions were mostly we got them on the streets from our friends, or we got them just by the seat of our pants, because there's not a lot of direct understanding, or there wasn't when I was growing up, of emotions as really crucial parts of your basic ability to understand the world. Emotions help you make meaning out of incoming data. They help you understand what's going on in your world. And they don't come to create problems. They arise because there is a problem and they need to help you figure it out, right? They help you make meaning of your world. So a lot of us will treat emotions as if, hey, depression, everything would be great if I just wasn't depressed. Everything in my life would be perfect. And your depression, if it were a person, would say, really, pal? Because I came here because there's trouble. And I'm trying to help you understand that there is trouble and it's time to slow down and figure it out. That's depression's job. This is situational depression, not the more serious forms of depression, such as postpartum depression or major depression. Right? There's depression, the emotion, and there's depression, a different kind of imbalance that you may need support with. But for your situational depression, the work is to say, okay, the jig's up, and I've been called to a kind of a healing ritual by this really important part of my basic cognition, the part of me that helps me understand the world more clearly. And tonight we're going to look at 4 emotions that we've all been taught to distrust, certainly, maybe even wish never existed. And we get messages all the time about these emotions, that they are, in the case of anxiety, it's a disease. Shame, a lot of people would like to never feel shame in their lives. They think it's just the most gruesome thing ever. And I'm like, it can be, but that's not shame's fault. Jealousy and envy, many people see these as primitive emotions that we only need when we were running around, with bows and arrows and fighting off whatever. But these 4 emotions are crucial. Shame and jealousy and envy are 3 of the 4 social emotions. And anxiety is actually your motivation. Without anxiety, you can't get anything done. But the way that we've learned about them has twisted us and given us very few skills to deal with these crucial emotional friends and allies. So we have given you, I think, a link to this language of emotions. It's a guide to the language of your emotions, and it has all of the emotions that we work with, all 17 of them, with the name, the gifts and skills they bring you, the questions you can ask to key right into that emotion, and then some signs of obstruction if you and that emotion are not friends yet. Yeah. And this is available to you, and it will be linked beneath the video or beside the video as well. So I wanted to start off with a wonderful quote that is from the brilliant sociologist of emotion, Arlie Russell Hochschild. And she said this in her famous book, The Managed Heart, which is about emotional labor, which is a concept that she pioneered. Emotion, I suggest, is a biologically given sense and our most important one. Like other senses, hearing, touch, and smell, it is a means by which we know our relation to the world and is therefore crucial to the survival of human beings in group life. Emotion is unique among the senses, however, because it is related not only to an orientation toward action, but also to an orientation toward cognition. So we can think of emotions as the 6th sense, or since there's 17 of them, let's keep going. The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. It's a part of our capacity to understand the world. If we don't know our emotions, they may come on, and because we've had such poor training, most of us had no training or negative training about emotions, we may experience them as a problem, right? We may say, why am I feeling angry? I'm not an angry person. What's going on? And what's the shame about? And what we're doing is we're avoiding our own soul. We're avoiding our own brain, our own capacity for cognition, our own capacity for meaning making. So learning to befriend emotions means that you can become more comfortable in the world because emotions are always going to be there, right? Emotions are always going to be there. So I thought we'd start first with a big hitter called shame. And oh, I see that there's a link for you to take a look at the Language of Emotions guide. Now, shame can be a difficult emotion to talk about for a reason I will tell you in a minute. I have shame and guilt together. I don't see a strong difference between them, but a lot of people will fight me for that, but it's okay. I call it restoring integrity. The gifts shame brings you are atonement, integrity, conscience, self-respect, and behavioral change. It also brings you respect of others. The questions for shame to maintain your connection to it and to work with it because it's arisen to help you is whose ethics and values have been disrespected. Now, it could be your ethics and values that have been disrespected, right? But a lot of times it's someone else's, and that can make shame difficult. The next question is what must be made right? Because shame is about atonement and conscience and behavioral change. If your shame is obstructed for some reason, and it could be bad training, your signs of obstruction may be crippling, repetitive, guilty feelings that do not instruct you or heal your relationships. It's just awful. Or you may have moved to shamelessness, where you and others are endangered by your delayed remorse or your inappropriate behaviors, right? So there's a sweet spot in the middle of shame where you are working with your own shame, not the shame that's been thrown at you, right? And you are able to make amends and atonement when you have stepped out of what your integrity is, right? The problem with shame is that most of us learned about it by being shamed. And a lot of times parents don't know how to, um, how to, I would say, cultivate shame in a child. Children do need to learn shame. Um, and a lot of parents will say, don't pull the cat's tail. And the child looks up, the child has the tail, the face looks like, oh, shoot. And at that point, the parent needs to stop shaming, right? Because the shame has come up in the child. Yeah. So maybe they'll let the cat go and then feel what it feels like to have been doing something inappropriate, right? And maybe even hurting the cat, right? But parents don't stop there and say, how many times do I have to tell you, blah, 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 blah. So this little person's body is overtaken by their own shame. And we all know that your own shame or any version of shame can hurt. And now the parent is pouring more shame onto the child's body. This overwhelms the child. It overwhelms any of us, right? And so children don't learn how to moderate and work with and listen to their own shame. It just feels like abuse. And if you've done this, all parents have, everybody's done this. We've all seen it. We've all had it done to us. You're not a monster, but it does make shame a really difficult thing for people. And in my work, I teach people how to articulate between the shame that belongs to me. I want to be a good person. I want to floss. And the shame, these are livable things. And the shame that came from the outside, maybe from media. No one will ever love you until you're perfect. You're not tall enough. You're not short enough. You're not thin enough. You're not fat enough. You're not smart enough. You're not stupid enough, right? All these messages coming from the outside. And basically, we're going to feel like that child with the cat going, I thought I had an internal feeling, but now I'm overwhelmed and I can't even get to it anymore, right? So in my work, a lot of it is about identifying which shaming messages are mine and which belong to somebody else, right? And there is a practice. All of the practices I'm teaching tonight are from the Language of Emotions workbook. And what I'm doing with these practices is helping you stay in the emotion while you do your sort of meditative mindfulness awareness work. A lot of people, if they are feeling overwhelmed by shame, would say, I need to feel happy. And if happiness were an emotion, it would say, friend, what are you even doing here? There is some atonement that needs to be made, and you're not going to feel happy until you do your work of shame, right? Happiness is like, I was sleeping. What are you even doing here, right? But that's what most of us are taught. We want to go to happiness. In this work, we stay with the emotion and work with it as an ally so that we can grow and evolve as human beings instead of just running around trying to be happy all the time. Yeah. Happiness is great, but it's not appropriate when it's time to feel shame. So if you have a paper and something to write with or on, you can also do this in your notes or whatever. I'd like to give you a little baby shame exercise. And this is from page 79 and 80 in the Language of Emotions workbook. We can look at healthy shaming messages that you've chosen or that you agree with and that are livable. Like, I'd like to be a good person and I want to floss, right? Something simple like that, that you can do, but it is an internal value. It is a part of your ability to maintain your behavior and become a blessing to the world, right? Um, so healthy shaming messages, it says, don't usually feel painful. They feel like a sense of accomplishment, dedication, and respectful self-discipline. So now write down a behavior you're proud of that you do sort of without thinking. And it might be hard to think of this because you do it without thinking. It could be something simple like, I am a pro at separating the recycling. It's something simple. I'm a respectful driver. Something. And then a question I have for you is, how did you learn this behavior? And a second question, how do you maintain this behavior in a world that's pulling you in so many different directions? How do you maintain it? All right. And the third question is, where does your dedication and your ability to maintain this behavior come from? purpose of this exercise is to help you see that you're already working beautifully with your own authentic, appropriate shaming messages, the what we call the contracts that you've made. You already are doing this beautifully. You just may never have called it shame, right? You may never have seen it as this crucial social emotion without which you cannot develop empathy. If children don't learn shame appropriately, they will have an empathy delay. And so shame and empathy are really very close. If you're a very empathic person, you got your shame nicely, but are there still messages coming through? Here's how to tell. If my shaming message that I've agreed to and I like it is I'd like to floss every night, and I get into a really good Korean show and I keep watching it and it's midnight. Now it's 12:30, right? My shame would say, Karla, are you gonna floss or are you gonna say that you're too tired, right? Are you gonna do it? And I'll be like, dang it. And then I'll turn it off and I'll go do it. And my shame goes nicely done. I'm like, okay, can I go watch another show? Right? That's me and my shaming message for a thing that I've chosen that is livable, that is appropriate, that is I've agreed to it. Now, let's say my shaming messages coming from the outside are, no one will love you until you're perfect. If some poor soul comes to love me, those shaming messages are going to go banana crackers. They're going to come at me every place I go. And it's not shame's fault. The thing with the flossing, that was me and shame working together on something we agreed to. This gruesome, awful message about no one loving you, shame is still doing what it does, which is holding you to a contract or an agreement that you've made. That agreement is the thing that needs to go away. Then shame can be like, oh, thank God, that was awful, right? So if the shame is painful, it's the agreement that doesn't work. It's not shame being a negative emotion. It's not negative at all. It's one of the most positive emotions that you could ever have. So, so giving some love to shame, if you've got terrible programming coming in, it needs to go. It needs to go be someplace else. But that your shame is trying to hold you to the agreements that you've made, and the work with shame is figuring out what agreements did I make, and let me unmake them. Okay. So there's our friend shame. We're going to move to anxiety. And I wrote a book, actually, for Sounds True, thank you, called Embracing Anxiety. And I learned so much about it. Anxiety is focus, motivation, and completion. The gifts are foresight, focus, task completion, preparation, and a procrastination support system. And it's also your basic motivation. The questions for anxiety are, what brought this feeling forward? Because it could be a lot of things, right? When you get in a sort of a heightened level of anxiety, you can suddenly have a great deal of too muchness. It helps to focus anxiety and then ask it another focusing question, what truly needs to be done? Because we've all gotten into on the anxiety train and then we're sort of doing everything and nothing. And anxiety is a very powerful, forward-leaning, forward-focused emotion, and it can unground you by its very nature. So it's important to remember to ground yourself and keep yourself focused on what needs to be done. Making lists is a really important anxiety practice because, yes, Anna says procrastination, that's me. And procrastination is an absolutely perfect way to work with anxiety. It is utterly normal and natural for many people to use procrastination as an anxiety management practice. It is, and welcome procrastinators, you're amazing. Signs of obstruction may be an inability to complete your tasks, to meet your deadlines, or to focus and organize your life. And it could be just fighting with anxiety is part of the problem, right? But it can also be that you're a natural procrastinator, and basically procrastinators are not welcomed or witnessed or valued in any way. And so they have to learn to be the opposite thing, which is a task-oriented person. But what I found with anxiety is when I asked people, tell me about anxiety. Tell me about your experience of anxiety as I was writing the book to a person, whether they were a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a regular person, anybody, every single person was describing panic. And so there's a huge problem in the understanding of anxiety, which is that people confuse it with panic. Panic is the emotion that saves your life. It's the fight, flee, free, and flock to safety, right? It's a crucial emotion. You always want to have your panic, standing by to help you. We love panic, but it's not anxiety. And anxiety is the emotion of motivation and task completion and procrastination if you're a procrastinator as well. And from the Latin, it means belonging to tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It means that a procrastinator knows what belongs to tomorrow, and they can be doing their work underneath awareness and then arrive at the deadline and have the thing ready. Task people like me need to be tasking all the time, and we very rarely go underneath awareness. But in that underneath part of awareness is where creativity is. So it's in the book, Embracing Anxiety, but this is a beautiful emotion. And anxiety and panic will sometimes come together. So anxiety is like, this task needs to be done, this deadline needs to be hit. There's a whole bunch of stuff. What's on that desk? There's stuff piled up. There's too much to do, right? That's anxiety's kind of nature. And if it's a part of maybe your job or your position in life, how you get things done, how well you're working, it can be in this time of end stage capitalism, right? It can be a danger to your life. So when anxiety and panic begin working together, you don't just get this, leaning forward focused of anxiety, but you get fight, flee, freeze, right? So you get these two extremely powerful emotions. And when they come together, we call them pangxiety, which is panic and anxiety. And one of the first things to ask panic is, am I in real, right now, danger of losing my life? Am I in, do I need life saving right now? And panic might say, well, no, not right now. You're not in danger right now, but you could be if you don't get this done, right? And so you say, okay, panic, if you could just like back up a little bit and let me work with anxiety and see if I can get the thing done. But, love you, miss you. But when I'm really and really, really, really in trouble, please come back, right? So getting these two a little bit apart is going to help you work with anxiety in a more comfortable way. One of the most important things you can do for your anxiety is make lists, because anxiety holds a tremendous amount in short-term memory, right? There's a tremendous amount in short-term memory. If you can put that on a piece of paper, it comes out of short-term memory, and your anxiety can say, okay, someone else is on this. Karla's on this. I don't have to hold this. And you can get some rest. If you're a procrastinator, you might prefer a mind map. If you haven't seen them, it's like, here's your deadline, here's the project, and then you have like spokes coming out about what is to do when. But it's so important to help your anxiety because it's a very activating emotion. There's a practice I have called conscious questioning for anxiety. And this practice helps you work directly with your anxiety. It's not, you're going into calmness. I'm going to breathe in calmness and breathe out anxiety. And anxiety is like, what are you even doing? This is not a calmness experience, right? You got a lot to do, my friend. So the work with anxiety is to learn to work with anxiety, right? Not bring in some other unrelated emotion. So one of the things you can do with anxiety is ask it questions. And I've got some questions, a couple. We'll do 3 or 4. And basically think of something you're anxious about. Maybe write it on top of a piece of paper. Something that's coming up, some task, some deadline, something that you haven't done, something that's unfinished. Just write it down. And we can ask a couple of questions to help you and anxiety focus. A first question is, have you achieved or completed something similar in the past? Have you ever done this thing? A second question is, what are your strengths and resources? A third question, can you delegate any of it? Another question is, why is this important? And then a final question, and there's more questions in the workbook. But what is one small task that you can complete tonight? It doesn't have to be big. We have a saying in my community, which is Empathy Academy and Dynamic Emotional Integration, which is there's always enough time for every important thing. The most important word in that sentence is important. A lot of times you can get on the anxiety train and just task, deadline, task, and kind of lose yourself. And it's nice to slow it down. Say, why is this important? Have I done this before? Like what is my purpose here? What are my values here? And that can help you in anxiety go, yeah, that's not even a thing I want to do. Why? Let's move that off, right? But if you're constantly in anxiety, it can be hard to ask those questions. So that's why there's some values questions and importance questions in here. Because again, anxiety is so forward-leaning and so future focused that it can kind of knock you over. And so you have to know this is a powerful emotion. I need some skills to help work with it. I could talk about these emotions forever, but we're going to be moving on to what I call the sociological emotions, jealousy and envy. We're looking at jealousy first. These are related emotions. They're similar to each other, but they have really important differences. Jealousy I call relational radar. Its gifts are love, commitment, security, fairness, intimacy, connection, and loyalty. The internal questions to ask jealousy are, what kinds of intimacy do I desire and want to offer? And what betrayals must be recognized and healed? Signs of obstruction might be that you cannot choose loyal, stable, or available mates because you don't ask yourself the question, what kinds of intimacy do I desire? Or it could be cycling suspicions that don't bring useful awareness to you or stability to your relationships, because in many cases, jealousy can be signaling that there's a lack of self-confidence within you where you don't feel worthy of love, right? And so you may project that outward onto the person who is loving you or trying to, right? So jealousy is about love and intimacy and close relationships. And I know we've learned that it's the green-eyed monster and all that kind of stuff, but it's just like shame. Because we don't understand shame, we don't know how to work with it, and we treat it as a problem. The same with jealousy. When jealousy comes up, there's a soft level of it, sort of like a, what am I seeing right there? Jealousy should be present before you go into a relationship. It shouldn't be, I like skiing, you like skiing, we both like oranges, let's get married. There should be a lot of checking out before you let someone into that close area behind, around you. But a lot of people don't know that. And so the jealousy may come out later when you realize we are not compatible. I don't know what I'm doing in this relationship, and this person isn't really loyal to me. It's because jealousy wasn't there in the beginning. Just setting up the whole thing, doing a sociological study of this person. So there's a practice for jealousy. There's a number of practices for jealousy. But what can help with this emotion, because we're kind of not allowed to do this, is to take another piece of paper and you can like put a line down the middle. And on one side, maybe the left side, put the intimacy I want. And on the right side, put the intimacy I offer. When you've got a healthy relationship with your jealousy, it's always going to want to look out for everyone. It's a sociological emotion. It's going to want to make sure that everybody has the love they need, not just you, right? And so leaning into this, this communal energy, this relational energy that jealousy has, can be a way to befriend it and to come into a conscious relationship with it. So again, on the left side is the intimacy that you want. And on the right side, the intimacy that you offer. What will people win when they get to be with you? And of course, both sides of this paper should be about even. But you could be doing this for the rest of your life. You could be writing this for the rest of your life. Because your intimacy needs, there's like a central value to them, but as you grow and change and mature, so do those needs. And it's important to be able to update them and to have a relationship that's strong enough that you and your partner or partners can consider how would that work for them. But going to someone with a demand isn't very sociological or relational, right? Remember, there's a movement of jealousy and of envy. They're watching your social structure all the time. They're watching your relationships all the time because relationships are crucial to your survival as a social being. And so not so good relationships are going to be not so good for your social survival. It's important to have really strong and robust relationships in this world, if you can. The sibling emotion to jealousy is envy. And I call envy interactional radar because it's about resources, security, fairness. The gifts are fairness and security, generosity, access to resources, recognition, and approval. The internal questions are, What resources and security do I desire for myself and others? What inequalities must be made right? Now, a lot of people think of envy as just what do I get for myself? But the smart envy is going to make sure that everyone has what they need. That's what makes a community and a relationship safe. You don't want things unequal and imbalanced, and envy will always call that out. The signs of obstruction are inability to ask for or receive what you desire or dream of. There's something that's stopping your envy from being able to reach out for what you need. Or you could have feverish greed that places your needs above all other things, including ethics and empathy. And we are seeing that a lot right now, right? People for whom there's no such thing as too much or even enough. Yeah. So there was a question earlier about anxiety seems to be about fear of rejection, at least for Joel. And if we're in a fear of rejection, we're in the area of jealousy and envy. We are in these two social and sociological emotions. They are trying to make sure that you are well situated in the social world. And with envy, um, both are about desire, both are about wanting, both are about accepting. And a lot of people have trouble with one or all three of those things, right? We've been told that jealousy is the green-eyed monster and that envy is one of the seven deadly sins in the Catholic tradition, right? So these two emotions need, I don't know, they need a publicist or something because they've been battered. And so as we go toward feelings of jealousy, we're told, you're a green-eyed monster, you need to stop that. As we go toward feelings of envy and desire and wanting and reaching, we're told you're selfish, you're greedy, right? We're really chased away from these emotions really aggressively. So if you have trouble with jealousy or envy, then congratulations, you are a modern person, right? And so I think one of the things, if you have a hard time accepting, if you have a hard time having and wanting and desiring, working intentionally with these two emotions is really important because they're they're going to help you situate yourself better in this world. And during what I call end stage capitalism, it's not so much about money as it is about access. I mean, for some people, it's all about money, but it's making sure that you that your relationships and your position, your social positioning is healthy, and it's as healthy as it can be for the people around you as well, right? That's part of the genius of these two emotions. Now, I have a quick practice for envy, and if you know about shadow work and the adored shadow, we're going to be doing a little adored shadow work. Um, think about someone you envy today, and on a piece of paper, describe them or the situation around them. What do they have? What did they get, maybe for free? What what are they taking? What are they getting? It can also be someone that you adore and idolize or idealize. It doesn't have that's a part of envy, but um, doesn't have to be the seven deadly sin envy. But just who has something that you desire so much and you want it so much? And then a question to ask yourself is, what is your envy showing you about what you admire in this person? Because it's likely what you desire for yourself. And a lot of times when we go into, the more intense and kind of fighty envy is that the person has stuff that we don't feel that they earned, right? They didn't earn that, they just got it. There's a big thing out now called Nepo baby, which means nepotism child. And it's anyone whose parents are famous is called a Nepo baby because they didn't earn it. And that's so unfair for everybody. But it's a thing. So everybody's envious of the nepotism children. And you realize, what is that saying to you, right? If you have the capacity for self-reflection, what is it saying to you? Do you wish your parents had paved the way for you? Do you wish the talent, that there was this wonderful talent that was somehow passed down to you, right? What do you wish for yourself? Instead of being a crank toward those children that tumbled out of golden wombs, and that's its own experience, y'all, is what does it mean about what you want for you? What do you desire? What do you wish for? What do you want? If you can take your eyeballs off of the Nepo babies and put it onto your own soul, it could be a call from the soul that would take you where you need to go. This is one of the gifts of envy. It can take you where you need to go and make you a little bit less toxic when you're around the children of famous people or whatever, right? You get to want things, you get to desire things, you get to wish to have things, but deepen it and find out what is in there for you. I love jealousy and envy. Yeah. And working with these emotions. Each of these practices helps you work with the emotion. We're not saying you're feeling envy, so now I'll go get happiness. Happiness is resting. You're feeling jealousy, so now you need to go get happiness. Poor happiness. Poor happiness. It is one of the hardest working emotions in show business, right? But it's one of the few emotions that we're welcomed to have, right? And there's a whole situation about that. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. Each of these four emotions, you would say these are terrible emotions no one wants to have. And yet each of them is crucial to your survival. Yeah. And one of the things that I notice about negative and positive emotions is I've been thinking about this for a couple of decades. Positive emotions like happiness and contentment and joy make us easy to get along with. And all three of them are about accepting the status quo. The negative emotions, which is everything else, out of 17 emotions, 14 of them live in this ridiculous negative category. The negative emotions ask for change, either from you or from the people around you. Anger is the emotion of social justice, right? So if people want you to have only the positive emotions, there's some nonsense going on underneath, is what I'm saying, right? If you are asked to separate yourself from 14 out of 17 of the entities and the influences that help you make sense of the world and run your life, I want to know why. I want to know why. And I refuse to do it, right? People say, we're just going to have happiness here. I'm like, you go do what you want, because in this body, we're going to have all of the emotions, right? But it's just really something interesting to think about. The negative emotions do not accept the status quo, and they will make change. So, there you go. Thank you.
Karla, we've had some interesting questions come in, and before I get to them, I want to ask you a general question, which is your take on the emotions is so pioneering, original, unique. How did you develop this body of work?
Um, it's a sad story, but it has a happy ending. I experienced a great deal of childhood trauma before like the age of 3. So before I really developed language, I developed an understanding of who I was in the world as a little female, as a little person, and it was horrendous. As I was going through that, and after my parents found out, my emotions were overwhelming. I was full of rage and panic and hatred, and I was a hard child to be around. I was a hard child to raise. I was a hard child to be. So for me, looking into the emotions wasn't like, I've got a pipe and a jacket saying I'd like to study emotions. It was more, I need to understand emotions before they kill me. And going in thinking these are the worst things ever, I was then drawn in because I have a big imagination and I'm very empathic. So they were able to tell me stories about who they were and what they did and why they did it. And I was able to befriend them. And then as I grew, I sort of helped other people to to do this same work. And it worked for them. And I began to get the ideas, maybe I understand emotions. Maybe this is what they always were. So it came through, this oceanic catastrophic disaster of a childhood. But the emotions which showed up, rage, hatred, panic, they were all there to save my life. And then the suicidal urge came too. So I I'm so glad that they took me under their wing and let me be one of their people because it's been a wonderful life that didn't start out well.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said the words the suicidal urge. That's a big thing to throw out here, but you have a teaching on that. It's always stayed with me, which is what needs to die, and asking that question at that moment, not the body, not the person, but what are we holding on to, or what needs to die, and that I think is extraordinarily instructive. So I just wanted to add that in
Thank
for
you.
my friends here. Now, Karla, we have some good questions about shame. And I think that you gave us this terrific exercise where we saw how useful shame can be when it's a value we have for ourselves, something we value. But a lot of us have made awful agreements with cultural introjects that we feel really ashamed about. And, I was thinking of the things that are really hard for me that I still feel a lot of shame about. And they're things I've bought into. I don't believe them, that they're not my values, but I still feel ashamed. And you're like, oh, you have to break those terrible agreements. And I think it would really help us to hear more about how we do that.
For me, I learned it through a practice called burning contracts. And the idea is that your behaviors are not set in stone, but there are things that you you chose to do at one point or another. You chose to learn how to do anger like this. You chose, how to do femaleness like this. You chose how to be in the world among everything. But a lot of times we don't remember that we chose, so we don't realize it was a choice. How we do whatever we do. And also, there's a lot of really toxic messaging that comes toward us. Um, don't talk back to me, you smart ass. I heard that a lot, but because I was a smart ass. But sometimes you pick those up. And burning contracts is a practice you can do imaginally, which I do a lot of, or on paper, where you actually write down, my job as a female is to be pleasing at all times, to heal everybody, to take on about, do you know what I mean? It's like you write it down. And what happens when you're writing it down or doing imaginal work is it comes out of unconsciousness. It comes into consciousness on the page where all of your emotions can see you doing it. And, we do a thing where we crush it up, we throw it, we burn it. I put a flamethrower for and it seems, well, that's just silly. That can't fix it. But in that world of imagination, which is where the emotions live, They see it. They all see it. So the next time you go toward that behavior, something conscious in you is going to be aware of it now. Maybe you'll do that behavior for the next 15, 16 years or times, right? But something in you will wake up to what was unconscious programming or what had become unconscious programming. And for me, that's been the most wonderful stuff because the programming that I picked up while I was being injured as a child was grotesque and it was going to kill me the way that I learned to be. So doing burning contracts is really helpful. We also have a really nice practice called renegotiating contracts. If there's a contract you can't give up, like, okay, yeah, it is in the workbook. It's on page 59. So renegotiating contracts is a beautiful one.
Specifically, someone's written in, I still don't quite get how to work with shame. Say, for example, I feel ashamed for failing an exam. How would you work with that?
Well, depending on whose value that is, if it was really important to you to do well on that exam, then your shame is appropriate, right? Because you didn't live up to a value that was important for you. And so then to make amends, to fix it so it doesn't happen again to the extent that you can control it, it would be studying, it would be doing something. If, however, the shame is an exterior thing from someone saying, I don't want to see anything below an A from you, young man, and it's an exterior pressure that you can't live up to, that's a contract to burn. That's a toxic nonsense, right? Either way, there's an action to take to, because there is failure, and failure can be dangerous or damaging. Yeah.
Just to clarify, it sounds like a big part of working with shame is that initial sorting of, am I ashamed because of my own true values or because of something I've taken on that doesn't belong to me? That initial sorting is really important.
Yeah. And knowing what your values are. There's some beautiful values exercise where you just write down your values and you write down what they mean to you. Take a couple of minutes. Why is integrity one of your values? You know, and that can help you sort of get your North Star going again, so that you're not just filled with all manner of things that other people have discarded.
All right, someone else wrote in, can you review for us why jealousy needs to be present before the relationship? I felt confused about that too. I understand why we might want to be clear on the intimacy I want and the intimacy I offer before a relationship, but I wouldn't be jealous before a relationship exactly.
Something I didn't go into was one of the four keys to emotional genius is to understand emotions arise at many levels of intensity. So if my jealousy is like, I don't trust that guy, that would be intense jealousy, right? But jealousy does arise. I'm looking at the emotional vocabulary. Soft jealousy and envy, concerned, connected, fair, inspired, protective, self-aware, vulnerable, trusting, wanting. You want to bring that sociological thing. How does this person deal with their past relationships? How do they treat their parents? How do they feel about money? What is their love language? What, right? So it seems scientific, and it kind of is, but I mean, people spend more time figuring out what French bread they're going to buy than they do who's going to move into their house and have access to their credit cards. So, so yeah, just being really clear that being with you or being with me is a privilege. It's not a right. There's some ground rules we got to set. There's some boundaries here, and a lot of people don't. They're just like, please, just love me. Uh, I'll do anything. Um, yeah, and jealousy has to be like, no, no, we need to protect you.
Okay, and then the person who wrote in about their anxiety manifesting as a fear of rejection, you could say social anxiety. And I think a lot of people relate to that. I'm afraid to go to this party, I'm going to meet people, no one's going to like me. And you said, wait a second, that doesn't actually belong in the anxiety category. And yet, I think a lot of people think they're experiencing it as something that they feel in their body that sure feels a lot like anxiety. So I wonder if you could help untangle that for us.
Well, I think there would be some shame there, right? Because it's a sense of I'm not good enough, nobody's going to like me, which there's a contract, right? There's jealousy and envy there because it's the person trying to or failing to situate themselves healthfully in the social world. They don't have the skills, or they don't feel that they do, or they have a place in this world. So again, there's more shame. And because your social positioning is so crucial to your survival, probably panic's there, right? And so most people think that panic is anxiety. And then maybe anxiety there is there too, because it's looking toward the future. It's trying to get you to do some tasks. It could be that there's a lot of emotions there trying to help you. But if you don't experience emotions as your allies, it's just going to feel terrible, right? Someone did ask, can you actually um, work with your emotions at an older age, past 60? Um, our oldest licensee in dynamic emotional integration is 86 this year, and she started when she was 82. And she rocked it. Emotions are your native language. Um, it mostly is a process of learning what they do and working with them directly and just letting all that ridiculous nonsense go and focusing on them.
And finally, Karla, if people are interested in learning more specifically about the work you do, the communities you run, and the classes, give us a sense of what's possible for people who want to go further.
At Empathy Academy, we have a community, and it's a little bit Facebook-esque, but there's no evil there. There's no corporate evil happening. And it's where we come in and we just talk about emotions and empathy, and we've created just a lovely community. We also give courses. There's so much free stuff on karlamclaren.com and on my YouTube channel. And yeah, so you'll find me. I'm online.
Karla McLaren, The Secret Language of Emotions. Thank you so much for challenging a big status quo, which is that some emotions are to be discarded. And yes, you said poor happiness. I don't know, what did you say about it? Was funny. You said several funny things. And I feel inspired to floss.
You can
Anyway,
watch some TV though, just
that's
some.
right. That's right. Thank you, friends. Thanks for being with us. Celebrating the Language of Emotions workbook, an interactive guide, 17 different emotions we can learn how to work with in our lives and appreciate, honor, respect, and love. Karla, great to be with you. Thanks,
So
friends.
good. Thank you so much.